Greetings adventurers and welcome to the Goblin Marketplace. Today is one of the more strange stories that I've ever had on this channel. It goes by the name, think I'm playing with a group of adults, end up in a kid's game, but I promise it gets weirder from there. Let's jump right into it. One of the older guys, mid-40s, I know, approached me to tell me he was setting up a game of Dungeons & Dragons and asked me if I wanted to play. I was pretty excited because I foolishly assumed this must be a group of seasoned pros who grew up playing in the 80s. Even as a guy in my mid-20s, this felt like I was being asked to the adults table for the first time and I couldn't wait. Game day rolls around and I show up at this guy's house. And he answers the door and tells me, "Go on straight through, the kids are out the back." I'm thinking, the who? Turns out, when he said he was setting up a game of Dungeons & Dragons, he was doing it for his 10-year-old son. He was never intending on playing at all. At the table were his 10-year-old son, his 12-year-old friend, and their two 14-year-old brothers. And me, a 25-year-old, trying his best to swallow hot shame at being grouped in with a bunch of children. The DM was sort of unusual, but a polite guy, maybe in his early 20s, but I wasn't sure. He was one of those nerdy dudes who was socially awkward, but spoke a million miles a minute. I resolved to try my best at having fun despite the embarrassment, and took a seat with the rest of the party. The DM had created character sheets for all of us, and instructed us to pick one at random. I thought that was pretty fun, and ended up getting a human monk. I saw on my sheet that I'd been assigned the true neutral alignment, so I decided to play as a monk devoted to the goddess of fate, allowing only the ever-present current of destiny to guide my life. I told the table that I carried a coin with me, and it was my religious duty to leave hard moral choices completely to chance, everything at the flip of a coin. The DM stopped me. "Actually, monks aren't a religious class, so you shouldn't really be following a god," he said. I figured he must have thought that I was getting confused, interpreting the monk as if it was something akin to the cleric. So I explained that I got how the class worked, but I was just role-playing. He looked at me sort of skeptically, but eventually told me that he would allow it this time, which had me kind of concerned. When it was time to play, we realized there was only one set of dice for the entire table. Completely fine, not everyone's flush with cash. I'd brought my own set of dice and a couple extras from home, so I emptied them onto the table and said we could easily just share them around. Mind you, this was barely 1.5 sets. Plenty to play a game, but not nearly as many as some people have. Despite this, I got immediate judgment. The parents were off to the side, within viewing distance of the table, which felt uncomfortable anyways, but as soon as I produced my dice, I was hit with a, "Wow, I knew you were into this game. Not that into it." Hot shame. Not only was I being treated as one of the kids, but now I was an adult who was way too interested in this children's game, and I was being judged for what was a barely noteworthy amount of dice. When the game began, things started to get even worse. It was a classic setup. We were bodyguards protecting a cart, traversing a dangerous part of the world. I was ready for some good clean adventuring fun, slaying goblins and taking names. Unfortunately, that came to an immediate screeching halt. The 12-year-old, who was playing a paladin, by the way, says, "I want to kill the cart driver." Oh shit. I've played with murder hobos before, but nobody anywhere near that brazen. This was literally minutes into the game. I tried my best to level with the kid. I told him he could do anything in this game, but if he played like this, it would ruin the experience for everyone else. Plus, it doesn't make sense, if he was hired to protect a cart, to suddenly murder the cart driver for no reason. He ignores that and rolls to attack. Okay, I think. My character was also hired to protect this cart, and the paladin serves a clear and present danger to the cart driver, so I'm going to need to restrain him. So instantly we have PvP at the very beginning of the session. So I just wanted to cut in here and say, this guy's a really good sport, and this might be the best instance you'll ever have of player-on-player combat that hasn't been cleared ahead of time by the DM, but totally makes sense in character. This guy doesn't know what he's walking into, he doesn't know the dynamics of the group, but obviously these guys seem to be beginners, and the DM seems to be, I don't know, I'm getting the impression that he's almost volunteered the position, because he was the oldest person this 40-year-old man knew that liked D&D, so the man's being a really good sport, and he's going to try to salvage the situation, but it really only goes downhill from here. What's even worse is that one of the 14-year-old guys was going through his edgy teen phase, and so he declares, "I want to kill the cart driver," and start chewing on his corpse. Okay, so now I'm fighting two PCs at the same time. Long story short, the goddess of fate must have been on my side because, due to a few lucky rolls, I managed to down both of them. The The DM allowed coup de grace rules, so I could have killed both of them right there. The 12-year-old murder hobo asks what I'm going to do, so I tell him, we'll let fate decide, and pulled a coin out of my wallet. Each of them would have a 50-50 chance to survive, both of them lost. The game was completely derailed at this point, so the DM wipes the slate clean and starts our characters alive and at full health at the first combat encounter. This time, he declares, we'll have none of this weird religious stuff from the monk, because it's not supposed to be a religious class anyway. For the next 3.5 hours, we proceed to have the slowest, most excruciating combat I've ever experienced against a group of goblins. No roleplay, no descriptions, just the goblin hits, you miss, you hit, for 3.5 hours. We finally make it through the horde of goblins and to a mysterious trapdoor in the middle of the woods. Okay, so I've made it through the shaming from the adults, the murder hoboing from the kids, the weird treatise against the roleplaying from the DM, and finally, we get to uncover a mystery, or find a strange ancient artifact, or some NPCs, but end of session. Nothing. We'll never find out what was behind the trapdoor because this was a one-shot. Of all the things I was mad about that day, the dangling mystery of the trapdoor drives me the craziest. Even though I know nothing was behind it, my brain is still unsatisfied by the incomplete story. I walked out still receiving a few comments from the adults about how weird it was that I was so into the game. I received an invite to come back the following week, but did my best to politely decline. I know this story isn't nearly as nasty as some of the others I've seen on here, but I still feel pretty embarrassed to this day. There was something so humiliating about being treated like a 12-year-old because you like this hobby. Now, this story was really short and sweet. Every single part about this is bizarre. You have this setup of this 40-year-old man who's an acquaintance of the author here that says, hey, you want to play D&D? Completely leaves out the context that this is like some kid's party, this weird weekly thing he does, I guess. And he's just like, yeah, no, this 20-year-old's perfect. Little Timmy down the block couldn't make it, so I guess this guy's going to fill in for him. And I don't know what the DM and the parents' problems were, but I feel like they were unwilling participants. They seemed to really hate that they had to supervise this D&D session. I don't know, it's kind of funny that they made like all these weird judgments I've literally never heard before for D&D. Everything from, oh dude, you own 10 dice? Kinda cringe, bro. All the way to, your character has a backstory, bro? Let's calm it down a little bit, okay? I mean, honestly, it's just a really funny short story. And it was actually kind of a nice change of pace because it wasn't something that was truly horror, just a little uncomfortable. But it does lead to the important question of, I guess, screening who you're going to play with ahead of time. With Roll20, it's always kind of weird who you're going to run into, but apparently in person can be just as bizarre if you're going in blind. So keep that in mind next time you're signing up for a session from an acquaintance, I guess. If you liked the video, make sure to subscribe. I've noticed people have been really enjoying the variety of these videos, and we're definitely going to dive into something a little bit heavier in the next one. I hope to see you in that next one. Farewell for now. Community shoutout time. Thank you Apocalypso, Deadly Plays, Alfonso, and Bloodsmith Gamer. Thank you for making this all possible with your support.